Designing AI for Social Good and Beneficial Outcomes. In a recent Nature article, AI for Social Good, Unlocking the Opportunity for Positive Impact by authors from the UK, Europe, Japan, and Africa that are part of the AI for Social Good, AI4SG, movement and representing academic institutions, global organizations, non-profit organizations, and tech companies like Google and Microsoft, provided a set of guidelines for establishing successful long-term collaborations between AI researchers and application domain experts, relate them to existing AI for SG projects, and identify key opportunities for future AI applications targeted towards social good. The AI for SG movement is putting interdisciplinary partnerships together that are focused on AI applications with respect to helping to achieve the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. The same guidelines are also relevant to the proposed MTP for Humanity and the 14 associated complementary MTP goals described in Chapter 10. These guidelines include ensuring that the expectations of what is possible with AI are well grounded, acknowledging that there is value in simple solutions, ensuring that applications of AI are inclusive and accessible, and reviewed at every stage for ethics and human rights compliance, making sure that goals and use cases are clear and well defined. Understanding deep, long-term partnerships are required to solve large problems in a successful manner, making sure that planning aligns incentives and incorporate the limitations of both the research and the practitioner communities, recognizing that establishing and maintaining trust is key to overcoming organizational barriers, exploring options for reducing the development cost of AI solutions, improving data readiness, and ensuring that data is processed securely with the greatest respect for human rights and privacy. The AI for SG group also highlighted some case studies to illustrate how their collaboration guidelines can be used with new, mature, and community-wide projects. These projects included the use of AI to improve citizen feedback in Somalia via a non-governmental organization called Shakodun, the Troll Patrol project that used AI to quantify and analyze abuse against women on Twitter and potentially make abusive tweet detection easier, and the Deep Learning Indaba being an AI community in Africa that supports AI for SG projects and use AI for sustainable development. A team from Oxford University's Digital Ethics Lab, as well as the Alan Turing Institute, which are also part of the AI for SG movement, shared 7 factors that are key when designing AI for social good in a Science and Engineering Ethics Journal article, How to Design AI for Social Good, 7 Essential Factors. They argue that our understanding of what makes AI socially good in theory is limited, that many practical aspects of AI for SG still needs to be figured out, and that we still need to reproduce the initial successes of these projects in terms of policies. Their analysis is supported by 27 AI for SG projects that function as use case examples. The team identified the following key factors to help ensure successful project delivery. 1. Falsifiability and incremental deployment to improve the trustworthiness of AI applications. 2. Safeguards against the manipulation of predictors. 3. Receiver contextualized intervention. 4. Receiver contextualized explanation and transparent purposes. 5. Privacy protection and data subject consent. 6. Situational fairness. And 7. Human-friendly semanticization. Each of these factors have a corresponding best practice for AI for SG designers. These include A. Identifying falsifiable requirements, identifying essential conditions for which the systems cannot fully operate, and testing them in incremental steps from the lab to the outside world. B. Adopting safeguards which ensure that non-causal indicators do not unsuitably skew interventions, and limiting knowledge in appropriate fashion of how inputs affect outputs to prevent manipulation. C. Building decision-making systems in discussion with users that engage with or are impacted by the AI systems and take into consideration the user's characteristics, the methods of coordination, and the purposes and effects of an engagement, and respecting the user's right to ignore or modify engagements. D. Choosing a level of abstraction for AI explanation that fulfills the expected explanatory purpose and is appropriate to the system and the receivers. Then deploy arguments that are rationally and suitably convincing for the receivers to deliver the explanation, and ensure that the AI system's purpose is knowable to receivers of its outputs by default. E. Respecting the threshold of permission established for the processing of datasets of personal data. F. Removing from relevant datasets variables and proxies that are irrelevant to an outcome, except when their inclusion supports inclusivity, safety, or other ethical imperatives. And G. And not obstructing the ability for people to semanticize or give meaning to and make sense of something. The team also makes the point that the essential factors that they have identified correspond to the 5 principles of AI ethics, which are beneficence, i.e., do only good that includes promoting well-being, preserving dignity, and sustaining the planet. Non-maleficence, i.e., do not harm that includes privacy, security, and capability caution. Justice, i.e., promoting prosperity, preserving solidarity, and avoiding unfairness. Autonomy, i.e., the power to decide. And explicability, i.e., enabling the other principles through intelligibility and accountability. Of these principles, beneficence is seen as a precondition for AI for SG. They also recommend that well-executed AI for SG projects require that factors should be balanced intrinsically on an individual factor level, not overdoing or understating a factor, as well as on a systemic one that struck a balance between multiple factors.